Welcome back. In this tutorial, we're going to focus on Google Docs formatting toolbar. We'll also look at options under the Format menu item, many of which are repeats, but you do have a couple of extra options in here that you can make use of. So let's get started. I've created the document and it has some filler text in it, but what I've forgotten to do was to put a title. So as in any word processor, in order to make space for that, I simply click in front of the first item and hit enter. Notice that there's no default spacing or very little default spacing underneath this paragraph that I type. And actually, these spaces were created by hitting the enter key, so blank lines. And in practice, this is not the best way to do things. If you're using Microsoft Word or something else, I would not suggest this. It's much better to adjust the spacing on the text itself, so to put some space after a paragraph or after a heading, etc., or before one, than to do this. But for now, let's do that so we can get started. Okay. From left to right. If I wanted to print this document as it is now, I could simply click the print icon or file print. Notice also you can use Control P, Command P on a Mac, and basically if there's a keyboard shortcut available to do this, to do a particular task, it should appear on the right in the menu. Okay, this is an undo button, so this will reverse the last thing that I did. In this case it was the blank line, and now I've undone what I've previously typed. One more step. So you can see you can go back quite a number of steps if you make a mistake. You can also use the redo button, and that basically, once something is undone, you can reverse that process. So now I put it back in the blank line, added in my text, and added in the other line. Next comes the Format Painter, and we will return to this later. This is simply a zoom, so I can see more of my document, or I can zoom in and see my document closer up. This is the font and the font size option. Now, in order to do this, let's select everything. So one way would be to click and drag. If you're used to doing this, I would suggest using a keyboard shortcut instead. So if you have a lot to select and you want to select the entire document, just hold down your Control key, Command on a Mac, and tap the letter A. That will get everything on the page. So I could change the font. There you go, Comic Sans. I can change the size. I can do some basic formatting using the bold, italic, and underline buttons. So let me bold the title. I will underline section 1, and I will also italicize it. This option allows me to change the text color. So let me do a Control A on the entire document and say the black is nice, but I really want a dark gray. Probably not a good choice, but it's available. And now let's come back to that Paint Format or the Format Painter icon. I've applied a series of formats. I've changed the color, I've changed the I've made it italics, I've underlined this particular feature. So if I want this to apply to another part of the document, I can simply click on the painter and then select that text, and it will pick up all of the formatting. So great tool. Notice if I select more, nothing happens, because since I simply clicked on it, I get to use it once. If I'd wanted to use it more than once, I should have double clicked on it. And then that tool will stay on until I click it again. Okay, let me undo a couple of those. Okay, great. Next tool in the list is the Hyperlink, which you can also get from the Insert menu. And when you click on the Hyperlink, you can see that the text I've highlighted is in the text box, because that's what people are going to see. And then what you basically want to do is paste a link into whatever you want to link to. So let's say that that's just a link to Google search. So I'll copy that and I'll paste it in there and I'll apply it. And that just now becomes a link to Google search. This is an alternate way to add comments. We looked at adding comments over here using the comment button, but I can add a comment using this icon as well. Works exactly the same way as I showed you in a previous video. It's just a different way to access it. These are your alignment buttons. So if I click on my title, I can align that to the center. And you notice you have left, which is standard for most text, center for titles and section headers if you choose. There's a right alignment, which is used less often, but sometimes, and there's also a justify. So if I click on the last one, it puts it into a newspaper or magazine type of format where it tries to make both edges even by adjusting the spacing between the words. Not generally used in most normal documents. Now, next to that is a line spacing button. So this would be how you could change from the standard 1.15 to either 1.5 or double spacing. So let me do that. I'll select everything in a document and I will simply make it double spaced. Spread everything out. Single spaced. You can see that's a little tight. So the standard in most cases is 1.15, and unless I have a special reason, I don't generally change that. I'd mentioned earlier that there was a better way to do the spacing on some of these things. Instead of, say, putting a blank line in there, let me take the blank lines out. So I've gone through the document and I've taken them all out top to bottom. An alternate way to add spacing, and I'm going to select all, is to come in and I can either add space before my paragraphs or after my paragraphs. So let me say after my paragraphs, and you can see that that created a nice space without that extra paragraph return. Now, a lot of people are used to spacing things by hitting the Enter key multiple times, and what winds up happening either in a Google Doc or in a Word file or some other word processor is if you have to make adjustments, if you adjust the size or you want things to fall on certain pages, you wind up having to undo and redo a lot of things. So instead of doing that, I would recommend using spacing on your paragraphs, and later on when we get to it you'll see how to do page breaks and column breaks, and that gives you much better control and over time saves you a lot of time. Now, I don't have to use the exact same spacing throughout my entire document, and sometimes it doesn't make sense to do so. So let's highlight just the title. When I come back to spacing, notice that I can add space before the paragraph, but my option to add space after the paragraph is gone because I've already added space. So this is kind of like a standard amount of space, and all I can do is remove it if I want. But alternately, I can go to custom spacing, and you can see that this is giving you a summary of of what the current selection has. It has a line spacing of 1.15. It has no spacing before, but it allows me to take this after space, or before space if I want, and adjust that for this particular paragraph. And you can see now there's additional space under my title. So I might decide that I wanted, let's say the section I want this space here, but underneath my subsections I want less space. So let's take subsection A, go to custom spacing and say, you know what, that only really gets 6. Okay, again, I can use my format painter to make that adjustment to other sections as well to keep things nice and consistent. And if I want to do it to many, it really would pay for me to double click that icon so that I can reuse the tool without having to reselect. Now I just paused the video and added a little more text in here, and I'm going to use these 3 items to create a list. And there are 2 types of lists. There are bulleted lists. If I just click on that, you can see that the spacing changed and bullets were added. It was indented slightly. Alternately, I could have made that a numbered list. There are options next to each of these, so you can see that this is showing me my format. It will be the number 1, and if I indent within that list, that will become A and B, and if I indent further, it will go to the letter I, and here you're seeing different patterns that you can use in a numbered list. So let's see how that works. Let's just take this and use the increase indent to push it over, and you can see how that works. In the same way, you do have options under the bulleted list. And that basically comes down to which bullets are going to be used. This increase and decrease indent button is not limited for use with lists. So if I just click on a paragraph and say increase indent, it will push it over the default of 1 tab. Let's say that I did this one twice, okay, indented it 2 tabs, and I decided that was a mistake. Then I use the decrease indent button to bring it back. The last item I'd like to show you from the toolbar itself, let me make a little room here, is this clear formatting tool. So I've created some text in Microsoft Word, and I want to use this. When you're copying from a word processing program like Word, one thing that you want to be careful of is any formatting that may come across and conflict with the formatting in your document. So I'll simply select that text and clear the formatting. Then I can click anywhere in this paragraph, select the format painter, and apply the same formatting to that text. You may have noticed that there was one tool that I skipped over, and let's take a look at that now. This is called Styles. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my section 1 and I'm going to define that as a heading 1 or a top level heading. Notice that the style changes, and I'll adjust that in a moment. And in thinking about this document, this is a subsection, so this is a part of section 1. So we'll make that a heading 2. And we can make this a heading 2 as well. And we could continue on through the document. Section 2, of course, would be a heading 1, etc. throughout the document. Now you'll notice that the style has changed. So I could fix that up pretty easily. I'm just going to go down to my section 2 here. And let me get the format painter and reapply that format. Now notice it's still a heading 1, even though it now looks like it did before. I'm going to turn off the Format Painter, and then I'll click it back on and apply that to section 2. Now notice it didn't make this into a heading. It may have applied the formatting, but it didn't define what style it was. So we're going to have to see what we can do about that. Let's go back to heading 1 and see what my options are. Oh, one would be to apply or to make something a heading 1, but the second would be to update heading 1 to match. So when I choose that and I look at it again, you'll see now it's picked up the styling. So that's very handy. I can come down to section 2 here and I can make it a heading 1 top level heading without disturbing its format. Let's come into heading 2. Maybe we'll grab this from the bottom, from the Format Painter. We'll apply it to a subsection. We'll update the subsection to match. And then that would update anything in the document. So let's go make this into a heading 2 and this into a heading 2. And I'm going to change that color to some kind of red. I'll take my heading 2s and I'll update heading 2s to match, and you'll notice now everything in my document is updated. So I hope you see how that can be an efficient way to format a document. Instead of having to go through now and do this 4 times or 50 times, by defining something as a heading in the beginning, it gives me a lot of control about how I adjust the formatting later. The other thing it's going to do is it's going to allow me to do things like make a table of contents or an outline to make this document more useful. And if it's a single page document, if it's a very simple document, these things may not be necessary. But as the documents get longer and more involved, it's extremely useful. Okay, let's take a minute and look under the Format menu itself. You can see that there's bold, italics, and underline. That's the same as here. There's a font size option, and instead of picking a number, it just allows you to increment it up or down. There's paragraph style, so here's where you can increase or decrease your indent, or you can define something as normal text, title, subtitle, headings 1 through 6. Alignment, line spacing, and lists. Those things should all look exactly the same as from the menu bar. There are some additional items not available through the menu bar but available through the Format menu. I'm going to find some additional options: Strikethrough, Superscript, Subscript, and columns. So let's take a look at those now. Let's prepare some text. So I'll make that a capital. Okay. So to use Strikethrough, you simply select it, Format, and Strikethrough. To make something a subscript, select it, Subscript. So now I've got a formula, chemical formula. And to make something a superscript would work exactly the same way, except you would pick Superscript, obviously. Okay, the last additional option in here is this column option. And you're familiar with this through word processors. You can break things into multiple columns. So let me come to the bottom of this document. let me make sure it's not indented. Okay, so there's a little bit of text and I want to do something special with that text, so I copy it out. I'm going to select it and format into 2 columns. And you can see now it's in 2 columns, although the columns are not really equally balanced. And we're going to look at how to work with those with column breaks, etc. But just know for now that you can break it into 2 columns, you can break it into 3 columns, you can go to more options and increase the spacing between those columns. Okay, so more space, less text per area. The other thing that I can do in there, under more options, is I can include a line between them. The last thing I'd like to do in this section is to go back here to normal styles, and you'll notice there are options at the bottom that we haven't looked at. Save as my default styles, use my default styles, or reset styles. Resetting styles will bring them back to the way they were when we began, the Google Docs default. I can also save these as my default styles. So now that I've made these changes here, if I want this to be my particular default, all my documents to look this way, I can do that there. And then I can decide to use my default styles when I open a new document. And under Format, if you go to Paragraph Styles, you will notice those same options exist here. I think that concludes our review of the formatting toolbar and the formatting menu option. With the exception, you will notice there are some things grayed out here, and that's because these things apply to images. This applies to lines when we take a look at the insert menu.